Hello everyone, my name is Akro and welcome to this week's reading. Today we're going to be reading a couple stories just to get the ball rolling, get some videos out there. I'm trying my best. So we're going to go through a couple that I've saved. I'm pretty excited, pretty hyped, let's go. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say, so let's get to introductions of our authors. Our first story comes from Redfang, aka Ronan Redfang. It's the story on Tales from the Creeps, which is like Creepcast uh, Reddit community where you can post stories. And then Creepcast, I guarantee you know who they are. But if you don't, for some reason, it's these two guys who read stories and they're pretty funny. So, yeah, that's about it. The story we're going to be reading today is called Clouds. That's the whole title. I thought I was kind of like, all right, what about clouds? And then there's a little tag saying cosmic horror and Lovecraftian. So I thought we'd just start off with like a cosmic horror story. Why not? Go big or go home. Um, I'm reading the first sentence. The morning when God decided to talk to me again. I don't really know how the story's going to be, but, let's just get to it. Clouds by Ronan Redfang. The morning when God decided to talk to me again, I woke up tasting sand, not real sand. You know that dry feeling that makes you choke on your own saliva? Sleep thinned out until the noise of garbage trucks outside brought me back to my bedroom. I stared at the ceiling, my temples aching, and I just knew today was going to be one of those days. I had woken up at least twice in the night, each time my heart hammering. The last dream had been about water, or something resembling water. It kept changing and folding in on itself, like a tide moving upward. Inside the tide, a voice whispered to me in a language I should have recognized but didn't. I gave up on sleeping. Just as the light started sliding through the edges of the shutters, I dragged myself into the kitchen and turned the coffee machine on. Its rumble filled the dark room while I leaned against the counter, scrolling through my phone with a still sluggish thumb. My feed was the usual list of random world news. Pharmaceutical giant announced trials for a new mRNA flu vaccine. Under a sky covered in black clouds, a drone showed footage of bomb buildings in the Middle East. A science article talked about the unexpected what is going on? A science article talked about the unexpected gravitational anomalies detected beyond the Oort cloud. What is that? Which astronomers theorized might be a new dwarf planet. Right below that, a huge photo gallery of a pop star's wedding that I'd bet would last less than a month. And then, as I waited for my coffee to cool down, I began my morning ritual, a habit I picked up years ago. I know it's weird and never told anyone because they wouldn't understand. I pulled up the live feeds one by one. I began with the courtyard of the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. Sorry if I butchered that. Packed with all those people circling in the center. Oh, is that the cube? I'm sure there's a pronunciation of that, so I don't butcher it. Is ratings? What? I don't know why. It's kind of funny to me to see ratings for a religious place. I just feel like I haven't seen something like that before. Like Google ratings, like it's a restaurant. Someone said the most beautiful place in the world and gave it a 1 star. Maybe it was an accident. I don't know. I began with the courtyard of Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, packed with all those people circling in the center. I moved to the Western Wall in Jerusalem, bathed in light. Then the muddy and crowded banks of the Ganges behind the Kashi Vishwanath Temple in Varanasi, the Golden Roof Johing Temple in Tibet, Dome of the Rock, the Great Buddha. Normal. They all look peaceful. After the coffee, I left my phone on the table and walked to the bathroom, stripping off. At 32, I make a living writing freelance for a local newspaper. I write pieces on subjects ranging from local politics to poverty, tourism fluff, and theology. I live alone in a 2-room flat that I like to keep dark. 2 months ago, I tried to explain to this woman who'd come to interview me to write a profile piece for the Literacy magazine how I prefer letting daylight in slowly, how I let the city in on my terms. And she described it as, Monteo lives in monastic darkness, which I thought was unfair but accurate. See, I used to wear a collar. I was a priest. I spent 4 years telling people that every suffering had a divine purpose, until I chose to walk away. There was no romantic way out, or a crisis of faith at midnight on my balcony. Not even a woman. It was slow and ugly. I don't talk much about it. I was ordained at 26 and left at 30, with a bag and a letter, filled with that taste of disappointment that doesn't taste like anything and yet never leaves your mouth. And living in Rome after abandoning the church felt like an ironic kind of self-flagellation. There was no escaping the bells, the swarms of tourists coming to see the bones of the saints, the statues glaring from every corner, but mostly the view from my bedroom window. The Vatican was 50 minutes away from my front door, and some days I could feel its weight from inside here. Water still dripped down my back as I stepped out of the bathroom with a towel around my waist. The bedroom remained buried in shadows. Breaking from habit, maybe because of the restless night, I walked over to the window, reached for the shutters, and pushed them open. Rome's mornings in the mid-spring smell like mixed stone and asphalt, of exhaust fumes and the scent of fresh baked bread coming from the streets. The city came in all at once. That particular light I called a Sunday morning quality, even though it was Monday. A woman on the opposite balcony watered a pot of flowers barely alive, while two guys argued down the street about a badly parked car, with their thick accent and dialect and their hands doing half the talking. Hey, why'd you park my car here, man? That's really like disrespectful, type shit. Oh, I don't know, man. I'm not a big guy. I don't know. I exhaled and tried to release some tension. I was glad I hadn't picked up my phone yet, because I would have dropped it. When I let my gaze drift up towards the dome of the Basilica in the distance, my hand gripped the window frame so hard the paint crumbled under my nails. Above St. Peter's Square, the sky was angry. Swirling directly above the whole Vatican was a massive formation of black clouds, rising from a point down on the pavement. They churned inwards like an endless spiral, heavy and thick, pulsing with a sickly purple undertone that devoured all of the sunlight instead of blocking it. Like a tumor growing on the sky, it spanned at least a kilometer across. Deep inside the mass, flashes of lightning cracked across the darkness and threw jagged shadows all across the Basilica, making no sound at all. Where the darkness ended with the unnatural scene, the city was perfectly sunny and fine. I gasped and took a step back. There's something I never tell anyone about myself. Something I always put off because trying to explain it is complicated. See, for as long as I could remember, I had always been able to see these anomalies, like shadows of the approaching grief, things in the sky that nobody else could see. Not always, and not in every place. As a kid, I thought I was just ill, hallucinations accompanied by migraines. I mentioned it to a doctor once, and then never again because I learned to read the look on his face, but the clouds never stopped appearing. That sentence had me like, fucking, what? I mentioned a doctor once, and then never again because I feel like that sentence could be a little reworked because I was struggling. I was really struggling with that. Before the cables of the Moratti Bridge in Genova snapped and dropped 43 people to their death, there was a dense black fog hovering above it in every picture and video I saw. Every time news of the school shooting from the U.S. or... Oh God, what is this? I thought this was going to be like a silly cosmic horror story, but it's just talking about like real life tragedies. Every time news of a school shooting from the U.S. or a terrorist attack reaches us, the images on the screens are blurred by a black mist. And the thicker and darker the clouds, the worse the death toll. They appear before something goes very, very wrong, right above the place it will happen. I could see it in even pictures and videos. Once I tried to call the police, that went nowhere. The footage from the 2004 tsunami still haunts me for a reason nobody else knows. In a video from a beach in Thailand, on my screen, the sky was completely replaced by the same black tumor I was now seeing from my window. The volume of the darkness was so heavy it seemed to flatten the ocean before it broke, and all those people filming were blind to the endless vortex spinning above their heads. The scale of what I'm looking at, right there above the Vatican, felt wrong. It stretched so far. Bury. I'm gonna bury you. What the fuck am I saying, man? Bury. There it is. Burying the entire state under a roof of rot. I knew what it meant. A slaughter was coming. Hundreds, maybe thousands, were gonna die soon. I stood at the window for a long time, still wearing only that towel around my waist. long enough for the two arguing guys down there to run out of enthusiasm. The formation of the black clouds didn't move, or rather, it did. It was still churning in that slow, inward spiral, but wasn't going anywhere. It stayed there, right above the center of the square, until I heard it. The sound silenced the noise of the city like a leviathan rising from the depths and hit my chest before my ears. Thunder from a sky that, everywhere else, was blue and clear. Down in the street, some tourists stood just below my balcony consulting a map. A woman in a jacket carried grocery bags, with no awareness of that colossal spiral looming just a few kilometers south. My laptop sat on my bag, with that blinking cursor on that empty page waiting for an article due by tomorrow, about uncivilized dog owners ruining public parks. I ignored it, threw on a pair of jeans and the first shirt I grabbed from the chair. I put on my shoes without bothering with socks, and snatched my keys and sprinted down the stairs to the streets. My car was parked on the pavement just outside. I got into the driver's seat and drove aggressively into the Roman traffic, windows down, ignoring angry horns and I have a feeling where I know this is going. He's going to cause it on accident. He's going to accidentally cause the explosion or whatever. I got into the driver's seat and drove aggressively into the Roman traffic, windows down, ignoring angry horns and a rider cursing at me near the Sisto Bridge. The Tiber glistened in the morning sunlight. Every time I had to stop, I leaned forward over the wheel and looked up through the windshield. The clouds were still there. From every street, they were disorienting. I'd lose them behind a building or a church tower, then I'd come around the corner and they'd reappear, bigger and darker. I cut past the old walls and hit the ring of the traffic circling the Vatican exterior, pulling over in the first available space I could find. Half a block away, where dozens of other cars had done the same. Ignoring the officer who shouted at me about the parking, I got out of the car, then I just ran towards the colonnade. For a mid-spring morning, the heat bouncing off the cobblestones was so intense it mixed with the smell of the city and made me sweat like it had been the hottest summer in ages. As I got closer, the mass of tourists thickened, the density that exists around St. Peter's at any hour of any season. The enormous colonnade opened ahead of me, Bernini's patient ellipse, gathering everyone inside. And through the gap, I could see the obelisk and the fountains and the basilica beyond. Above it all, directly over my head now, was pure rage. Close enough it covered the entire visible sky, a swirling, apocalyptic cyclone grinding the air to dust. Tens of thousands of tourists walked around, oblivious, snapping pictures with their phones. I joined the long queue at the metal detectors, shifting my weight constantly, unable to stand still. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. The police officer at the security monitor glanced up at me when my turn came. His brow furrowed, and he asked, in a thick Roman accent, if I was all right or needed a doctor. He pointed out that my face was pale and that I was hyperventilating. I muttered an excuse, grabbed my stuff, and walked through the security gate into the square. Under my shoes, the cobblestones seemed to vibrate with the thundering rolling inside the clouds. Among the movements of the crowd, I stopped and looked up. The cone of clouds, visible now from my position, made it almost collapse. It spiraled downwards and converged like a narrow tunnel onto a single point, like an inverted tornado that touched the ground, an arrow made of angry weather. I turned and followed the point of it, tracking where it aimed. I shoved my way through the crowd, unable to hide the panic. Who cared if anybody was staring at me, or what they'd think? The arrow pointed straight into the center of the crowd. My eyes tracked the lowest point of the black clouds. So it's kind of like tunneling in to a single point, kind of. Almost like a tornado, I guess. Or at least I think that's what's being implied. A young woman stood still, maybe 20 meters from the obelisk, by herself. Everyone else in the square was in motion. Even those who stopped to take pictures were gesturing or turning around. She was still among the shifting ocean of people. Her hands hung up on her sides. She stared at the basilica with such intensity it terrified me. The arrow ended right above her head. The sky screamed at her, converging all of its dark gravity onto her shoulders, but she didn't even flinch. The square was filled with the smell of cigarette smoke and the stone smell that the city exhausts when it's too hot. Next to me, a tour guide was explaining something in Chinese to a group of tourists through a small microphone. Her voice cut through the chatter of 1,000 people. a group of nuns walked by, laughing at something. Above it all, the sky was tearing itself apart. A low, continuous grinding moved through the air and the stone beneath my feet, making my bones vibrate. The black spiral rotated with that sickening sound, masked from everyone else but me, fast enough that I could track its movement. There was no doubt the tip of the cyclone of rot pointed directly at her. I shoved my way through the sea of people taking pictures and posing for selfies. My chest heavied, my sweat dripped from my forehead into my eyes. I could hear my own heart pulsing so hard it made my vision shake. When I stopped a few meters from her, she hadn't moved her eyes from the basilica facade. Heavy sobs shook her shoulders. Her cheeks were wet with tears. "Hey," I gasped, catching my breath and wiping my forehead. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" All right, maybe not that voice. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" She jumped and turned. The dark circles under her eyes and the paleness of her skin told me more than any words. From her reaction, I must have looked like a creep, struggling to breathe, my hair damp and sticking in every direction. "I'm fine," she said. "Go away." Someone bumped across my shoulder as I took a step closer. "You don't look fine." You don't look fine. Hello, princess. You don't look fine." "You don't look fine." I tried to sound as safe as I could, but probably failed. Her face shifted. She spoke with a voice that was flat, emotionless, and for some reason I found scarier than if she was louder. "Leave me alone." I took another half step. "You look sick," I said, a bit ironic, since I was the one looking about to have a heart attack. "Just let me—" I said, "Get away from me." She hissed like a cornered cat, shrinking back and clutching the straps of her backpack. "Or I'll scream." I threw my hands up and stepped back. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going." I turned and walked away. Every beat of my heart made the pressure of my head throb. I glanced back. What was his plan there? What is his plan in general? How is he going to... You have this power to see tragic stuff happen, but like all the tragic stuff... I mean, I guess one of them was like a school shooting, right? So I guess you could stop that hypothetically, but I have the feeling this isn't something you could stop. It's just... It needs to happen. If there was not a black cloud, then it wouldn't... I feel like it's going to happen no matter what. It'll be like one of those things where even if you stop the initial person, there will be like another way for it to work around, and then it'll happen in some other way. Like, I think it's inevitable. So I don't know what the main character's doing here. I'll just get out of there. Every beat of my heart made the pressure of my head throb. I kept glancing back over my shoulder. In my peripheral vision, she hadn't moved a single step, and the clouds above her head never stopped spinning. A dark wind I could only see blew around her. Near the fountain on the right, 2 police officers were leaning against the car, chatting in the shade. I walked over to them and pointed vaguely into the crowd. "There's a girl here, by the obelisk," I said. "She looks like she's having a medical emergency. She might need help." They looked. She wasn't hard to spot. The only person in the area not in motion. One of the officers, the taller one, nodded. "We'll take a look." They walked through the tourists as I watched from a safe distance, still catching my breath. They closed the gap and called her. Her head turned, and then with whatever mechanism activates when your body knows before your brain can process it, her entire demeanor shifted in a fraction of a second. I could see it, the panic filling her face and taking full control. She spun around, shoved a couple checking a map out of the way, and ran. My eyes widened, trying to follow her. She ran well, which surprised me. A blind panic flight towards the denser part of the crowd. She's doing like the Flintlock Wood run right now. Flintlock Wood. Flintlock Wood. A blind panic flight towards the denser part of the crowd. A direction that instantly made the pursuit harder. One of the officers shouted and began to chase her. The crowd parted in confusion. The other officer said something into his radio. Tourists screamed as she rushed through them. A stroller was knocked over, thankfully empty. When she darted towards the right colonnade, nausea twisted my gut. Did I just set the dogs on her? What was going on? Heads turned and bodies stepped. An Asian tourist raised a phone. A woman pulled a child close without knowing why. The entire St. Peter's Square fractured along a line that... A woman pulled a child close without knowing why. You, here, now. What are you doing? I don't know you. Come here. The entire St. Peter's Square fractured along a line that moved with the speed of the girl in the light jacket that was too heavy for the heat. I didn't run after the officers. The girl disappeared behind a group of maybe 30 people clustering around a guide with a yellow umbrella. The officer slowed, turned around. One of them had already peeled away to a different angle. For a few minutes, everything was worried movements and radio crackle. The bewildered looks of 100 tourists staring, open-mouthed. When the square returned to normal, she was gone. The officers reached a colonnade, scanning the area. I looked up at the clouds. Still there, darker than before. The cone converging near the obelisk was gone. Now a family stood there, smiling while taking a photo under the invisible darkness. I knew this place was almost better than my own flat. If she had headed right, there was only one way she could try to slip out: the Borgo neighborhood. I cut left, bypassing the main surge of the crowd, and slipped behind the columns where the shadows gave some relief from the heat. I walked down the perimeter, my eyes locked on the gaps between the pillars. An officer blew his whistle in the distance, and then his voice faded, lost in the maze of bodies. I crossed the street, constantly scanning the pavements, the outdoor bar tables, the souvenir stands and every moving face. I checked the first side street, then the passage between two shops hanging rosaries and magnets with the image of the Pope. It took nearly half an hour before I saw her, there, tucked in a space between the column and a souvenir cart filled with cheap Colosseum statues and snow globes, half hidden in the corner by the movement of people. She had her arms crossed and her chin down, like someone just waiting there, if not for the way she was looking at both ends of the street. When I stepped around the cart, she saw me and spun to her right, ready to disappear again into the traffic. "Please don't run." I tried to keep my voice low, but clear enough for her to hear me. I raised both my hands to shoulder height. I stayed where I was, leaving a clear path to the street for her to cross. "I'm not with the police. It's just me." She pressed herself against the column, her chest heavied. "Get away from me." "I can't," I said, because it was the truth. Not with what was still swirling in the sky above us. "I just want to know if you're okay." I said, "I'm fine." "If you run out there right now, you're gonna get tackled," I said with her feet shifted again. Keeping my breath steady was a challenge. "You're standing in the most paranoid place on the planet. There are cameras and police everywhere. Running will only make you a target. Why did you call them on me? You looked like you needed help." Silence around us. The streets never stopped moving. A van attempted to reverse into a space it didn't fit. A group of people on bikes passed us. "I didn't do anything," she said. Her voice came out cracked by a sob. "I didn't say you did. I didn't accuse you of anything." I slowly shook my head and lowered my hands. I feel like something is very wrong right now. And you, I looked up at the clouds. You are standing right in the middle of it. She stared at me. Without answering, her eyes kept darting between the main street and me, probably considering her options. I hoped she wouldn't make the wrong choice again. "Let me walk you out of here," I offered my hand. "We just walk. No running. Nobody chases calm people looking at the sights. We cross the street and get out. I'll get you something at the bar, and then I'll disappear. Deal?" I faked a smile. So we did. We walked out. She kept a bit of distance, her arms crossed and her eyes trembling. I kept my hands in my pockets without saying a word for the first minute. Because sometimes, the best thing you can do to make someone feel safe is just nothing. We reached the exit. No one stopped us or looked twice. She broke the silence. "You look like you're about to pass out." "Yes, I think that too. How did you know I was here?" "I spent many years in this place. I know how it works." She narrowed her eyes at me. "Are they still looking for me?" "I don't know. Probably." I glanced back once, towards the Belcia in the distance, but they must be looking in the other direction now. She hugged herself. "Why do you care?" The truth was going to be too complicated to explain, so I just said a different truth. "I don't know." I don't know. We made it into a small bar tucked down a side alley. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and fresh-baked croissants. A ceiling fan wobbled above our heads, failing to do much against the heat. I got her a bottle of water and a cup of tea with a small slice of cake before we sat in the furthest corner. My head was still killing me, because every time I glanced towards the window, I knew the black mass was still there, covering the sky. Her feet bounced under the table, and she constantly checked the main entrance. Adrenaline began to slowly fade from my veins, replaced by exhaustion. I pushed a bottle of water across the table, and she took a small sip. "I'm Elena," she muttered when I asked her name. She stared at the label on the bottle. "I'm 21.
What's 9 plus 10?
What's 9 plus 10? 21. I'm Matteo, I replied, with an open hand to my chest. She volunteered a few answers to my questions with the same flat, defensive voice. She used to study medicine, but had to drop out. She lived alone with her 5-year-old daughter, who was currently at school. She refused to tell anyone else about either the father, or why she dropped out, or why she was crying in St. Peter's Square. I used to work there. I leaned back against the chair and pointed a finger in the direction of the Vatican. I was a priest. Her eyes snapped up and met mine. Is that why you're obsessed with helping strangers? Maybe, I added, before she could say more. I spent 4 more years inside those walls until I couldn't take it anymore. You look at it and you see a holy place, but I look at it and I see the bishop hoarding up real estate while people starve and freeze on the streets, or cardinals covering up scandals to protect the brand, moving monsters to a different church to avoid lawsuits. The collar felt like a rope around my neck. I couldn't even stand up anymore during Mass. We talked for a while, but she refused to tell me more about her. I studied her face carefully. Sharing my personal experiences might have explained to her why I approached her in the first place, why I recognized the look she had been directing at the world. Her grip on her cup loosened. Do you live here? She asked. Yes, very close, I answered. I've thought so many times about moving away. Why didn't you do it? I don't know. I looked down at the table for a second. Maybe because it would have felt like a surrender. Fuck, she said when she checked her phone. You distracted me. I have to pick up my daughter. Oh shit, it's so late. She scrambled to grab her backpack and struggled to pull it over her shoulders. Do you have a car? I asked. No, I gotta run. My car is parked close, just a minute from here. I can drive you. I know where the school is. She stopped halfway to the door and turned to look at me. I could read the suspicion on her face. She analyzed me, searching for something. Maybe where the trap was, or a reason why a stranger would offer her so much help. I just gave her a tired smile, but a real one this time. She took a heavy breath, adjusting the straps of her bag. Okay. All right, we'll take a little intermission. She's going to be the reason of this event. I'm making a wild guess. I'm going to make a guess that it does happen just because it's a short story. Why not? Make it happen. Make the main character die. Who cares? I'm going to guess that she has superpowers like Elle from Stranger Things, and her nose bleeds and she goes, ah! She screams really, really loudly, and then like everything around her just blows up. That's my guess for like why she's causing a event. Honestly, I don't know though. I mean, it could be a physical thing. It could be another like spiritual or I don't know, ghostly thing, Lovecraftian thing. I'm a little confused about the Lovecraftian part. I feel like this is just kind of like a normal spooky story so far, so we'll see where the Lovecraftian part comes in. She's definitely hiding something. I think she was planning to do something bad. And then the main character, I don't get him. I don't understand him. And that's all I have to say about him. All right, let's go. I hope the interior of my car didn't smell too bad after hours under the heat. Elena sat pressed against the passenger door, knees drawn together, and stared straight ahead at the traffic. Through the rearview mirror, I couldn't help checking the sky behind us. The swirling mass was still over the Vatican like a festering wound. I tried asking her some more basic questions during the drive. How long she had been living there, if she'd liked it, but her answers were mostly single words or awkward grunts. I guess she was still waiting for the catch, the moment I was going to demand something in return for the help. I pulled up to the crowded elementary school just when the afternoon bell rang. Swarms of parents and children spilled out onto the pavement. Elena walked out without a word into the crowd while I stood there, leaning against my car, arms crossed. Above me, the sky was clean, kilometers away from the black clouds linked to her. A minute later, she emerged from the crowd holding the hand of a little girl wearing a pink Hello Kitty backpack. She had the same dark hair and big brown eyes. Seeing the two of them hand in hand brought back a wave of nausea. Whatever was coming, they were both standing right in the blast radius. Thank you for the ride, Elena said. We can walk from here. The little girl looked up at the mother and then at me. "Who is that, mister?" "Hi, I'm Matteo," I said, slightly crouching to her eye level. "And what's your name?" She brought her tiny fist to her mouth, chewing on her nail. "Alice." I gave her a smile. "That's a great name, like Alice in Wonderland." "We really have to go," Elena said, pulling the girl closer. "I need to get groceries before heading home." Alice groaned. "My legs hurt, Mom. I don't want to walk." "I can drive you to the store," I said, straightening up, "and then I'll drop you at home." "No problem, really. Let her rest. She's tired. It's too hot to be dragging groceries around." "No, we're fine." Elena glanced at her daughter. "I'll carry you if you're too tired." "You're both exhausted. Come on." Come on. Get in my car of a guy you just met 20 minutes ago. Come on. I'm not going to kidnap you. Maybe. Anything could happen. I pointed out, trying to keep my voice gentle. "Just let me help. It's not like I have anywhere else to be." Oppressive heat radiated from the asphalt. She stared at me for a moment, biting her lip. Then she didn't say anything. Just opened the rear door and let Alice into the back seat. The store was calmer than the usual mess inside the narrow aisles, and a welcome relief from the heat. I grabbed a cart and trailed slightly behind him to give Elena enough space. The way she moved felt like she was on a timer. Her eyes stopped at the price tags for too long before dropping the items into the cart. Some cheap pasta, canned tomatoes, and legumes, a small loaf of bread, some vegetables, some fruit. Alice occasionally pointed at a bag of cookies or a toy. Elena would slowly shake her head and whisper something about waiting until next week. She protested when I reached past them and grabbed the cookies. Alice had been staring at them and tossed them into the cart along with a bag of chips and a small pack of ice cream. She even tried to put them back on the shelf, but I stopped her. When we reached the register, I stepped in front of her and tapped my card on the reader before she could pull out her own wallet. "What are you doing? I can pay for my own food," she said. "It's a gift," I answered with a half smile, "to apologize for bothering you so much." This guy would fucking creep me out personally. Get away from me. Go away. Stop tracking me. Stop paying for me. I don't know you. I don't know. I feel like that would really creep me out. Alice dug into the bag of cookies, raining crumbles on the backseat of my car as I drove to the block of their flats. The neighborhood was a row of decaying concrete buildings covered in graffiti with rusted balconies. Looking up, I had no need to ask which one was her building, not even which floor she lived. Oh my God, please tell me. Please, God, tell me he doesn't go inside. Please tell me he just goes, "Have a nice day," and then drives out of town and away from this whole thing. Seeping out from the cracks around the third floor of the middle building was a thick black mist, like smoke coming out from a burning house, or better, like a fungus clinging to the bricks and growing all along the side with a pulse that belonged to a sentient being. I thought the storm over the Vatican was just a projection, but this was the source. Something hot and sharp stuck me deep in the chest. I couldn't stop here. I had to go inside. I grabbed the 2 grocery bags from her car boot. "I'll carry these up for you." "Stop, really," Elena said, reaching for the plastic handles. "You've done enough." "I'll carry them up to your door. Put them down and leave," I said, and stepped past her towards the entrance. "Then you'll never have to see me again. I promise." She didn't argue further. Our footsteps argued in the stairwell. At her door, on the 3rd floor, she turned the key and ushered Alice inside. I set the bags at the threshold, already preparing a speech to beg my way in, because there was no way I'd give up right there. But Elena turned to me. "You can come in." Why? What is she scheming? She's scheming something. Maybe she's the murderer. I don't know. She almost whispered without looking at me. "I can make coffee to thank you for this." The atmosphere inside the flat crushed me as soon as I stepped in. Literally. The mist I'd seen from the street filled the whole place. To them, it was invisible. But to me, it was like everything was turning to ash. Gravity doubled. Every breath was an effort. It filled my lungs with phantom smoke. I scanned the living room, a normal couch, a TV, some scattered toys around, a small coffee table over a rug. No pictures of a dad. No men's shoes by the door. I'll put these away, Elena said, taking the bags to the kitchen. Alice, go wash yourself, sweetie. As the little girl ran to the bathroom, I noticed it. The mist wasn't still. It moved, drifted down the hallway to a pool at the back of the flat. I followed it, like a trail. The floorboards creaked under my shoes. The mist thickened before the doorway of the bedroom. I stepped in while Elena wasn't looking at me. It looked perfectly normal. Just a room with an unmade bed, a closet, a large window, and an empty chair. But the mist spiraled upward in a thick and violent funnel to converge directly on the top of the closet. I'd squint through it and spotted a large cardboard box shoved into the gap near the ceiling, draped with a dusty gray sheet. What are you doing in here? Elena stood in the doorway behind me, her hands still wet and her face pale. That was it. The weight of the room turned oppressive, so I made a decision. I dropped the polite act. There is something very wrong happening right now, Elena, and I want to know. Tell me, what's in that box? Get out of my house, she said, her voice shaken. No. I took a step towards her, not caring what it must have looked like. You were having a breakdown in the middle of St. Peter's Square, I said, taking another step closer. Then you ran from the police like a criminal. You are hiding something massive up here, and I want to know what. Get out, she yelled, but her face wasn't angry at all, not even scared. Her finger pointed at the hallway. Now! I pulled out my smartphone and dialed 112, leaving my thumb hovering the call button. You tell me what's in that box, or I'm calling the police. Right now, and we'll see what you do then. She froze. Whatever was left of her evaporated. She collapsed, sliding down along the door frame, and sat on the floor with her face buried in her hands. Stop, she managed to say before her voice began into crying. Please, stop. I didn't want to do it, okay? I was never going to do it. I couldn't. My heart hammered against my ribs. I lowered my phone. What are you talking about? Do what? Make them pay, she said. I grabbed the empty chair near the bed and dragged it in front of the closet. She didn't get up, didn't try to stop me even when I stepped up to reach for that box. She just kept crying into her hands. I hauled it down, the muscles in my arms and my back strained against the weight, heavier than I expected. Something metallic clanged inside. I set the box on the chair and opened it. All my blood turned to ice in that moment. Lying on top of a dusty sheet were 2 guns, several loaded magazines, a heavy tactical vest, and what horrified me the most, a thick belt wired with explosive charges and a taped detonator. The black mist slowly faded, dissolving like smoke drifting out of an open window, and yet breathing became impossible. What is this? You were going to... Her face was a mess of tears and smeared makeup. Alice's father was the priest in my hometown, she whispered. I was 15 when he took me in the garden of the church one night after everyone was gone. When I got pregnant and told everyone, he denied it. No one believed me. They called me a whore. Even my family. They threw me out. She stopped, sobbing and hugging herself around the stomach. He stole my life, my soul, and then he walked through the church every day in his clean clothes. I wanted to burn his whole world down. I stepped away from the box of horrors and knelt in front of her. I wrapped my arms around her shoulders and pulled her closer. You wanted to murder hundreds of innocents because of one person? I went there so many times, but I never found the courage to actually do it. I wanted them to pay. Isn't that the reason you left? Because of the rot. She choked on her own words. I just wanted justice. You have every right to be angry, I said, holding her. But this won't give you justice. This is insanity. It will just turn you into a monster. It will end with you and Alice dead. I pulled back and looked into her eyes. We have to call the police. No. She shook her head frantically. They'll take my daughter. They'll put me in a cell. If you surrender right now, if you call the police yourself and hand over all these before anyone gets hurt, the law considers it voluntary abandonment. You won't face terrorism charges. I will help you. I will testify and find you a lawyer. I will make sure you and Alice are safe. She stared at the open box, at the reality of what she had planned to do. I went on. But you have to do it yourself. If you surrender voluntarily, a good lawyer can work with that. It doesn't have to end the way you planned it. You don't know that. I know more than you think, I said, and I promise I'm going to find you the best lawyer in the whole country. Today. She looked at the box again. Promise me Alice will be okay. She will, I promise. During the next few hours, I stayed right beside her as the police and the bomb squad cleared the flat. I explained the situation to the chief officer, emphasizing that she had surrendered on her own. Then the social workers arrived to take Alice. Elena hugged her and told her she would see her soon. I gave them all my contacts, promising to follow up in the morning. It was past midnight when I finally drove back to my flat. I dragged myself up the stairs. My body ached with the exhaustion of the longest day of my life. Without taking off my clothes, I collapsed onto the bed, staring into the dark. I couldn't believe it. I had done it. I had actually done it. I stopped a massacre, saved hundreds of innocents, saved Alice, Elena, maybe even myself from the edge of damnation. Then I fell asleep. My shirt was glued to my chest with a stale sweat when I woke up this morning. The only way I could describe how I was feeling was as though I had been poisoned. A massive headache pulsed around my temples and behind my eyes. I sat up with a groan and opened the drawer of my nightstand, fumbling until I found a pack of ibuprofen. I swallowed 2 pills without even water. Then I reached for the phone on the floor and laid back down on the mattress. It was almost 11 in the morning. The news app opened as I rubbed my temples. I scrolled through the images of airstrikes in the Middle East. The dark clouds hovered over the photos of the bombed buildings. More political scandals. Another scientific article about the gravitational anomaly detected yesterday shifting and accelerating close to Jupiter's orbit. I scrolled past the new movie announcement. I tapped on the live feeds for my usual ritual. The images loaded, but something was wrong. No, everything was wrong. It was supposed to be a sunny afternoon in Mecca, but the entire courtyard was buried under a churning, pitch-black vortex. People were running in chaos, their faces turned upwards. I stopped breathing. I switched to the western wall. The ancient stones were barely visible through the colossal thunderstorm that wrapped all around Jerusalem in a sickly, tumorous purple. Black cyclones sowed destruction across the sky above the Kalshi Vishwanath. My heart burned with pain. I threw my phone onto the bed and struggled to rush across the room, grabbing the handles of the window and yanking it open. The Vatican was completely hidden. Its sky had been replaced. Where the Balasia should have been, an apocalyptic nightmare erupted. The dark clouds I'd seen yesterday were nothing compared to this. A boiling mass of absolute darkness swallowed the entire horizon, laced with the veins of the lightning that made no sound, and the pressure reaching my window almost shattered the glass. And the heaven departed as a scroll, and when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island moved out of their places, I whispered. I gripped the windowsill as my legs trembled. I saw it now. This had never been about Elena. The Lord hath his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. A chattering noise began to crawl through the air, like a swarm of 1 billion insects clicking their mandibles. As I stared, the black mass above the Vatican split. The sky opened to space. It peeled back like rotting skin to reveal a glistening membrane underneath, pale and wet, spanning kilometers and shifting with the typical regularity of a living being. A fragment of an anatomy so colossal and alien it defied comprehension. He bowed the heavens also, and came down. I fell to my knees, clutching my head as the sound vibrated into my skull. Humanity has been sending prayers upwards for as long as it had known how to kneel. Tens of thousands of years of words to something above that listened, and the signal accumulated across generations and languages and contradictory understanding, like a constant broadcast from every altar and stone where someone had folded their hands. The question I've been circling since I was a kid, the one I ordained myself to answer and then left the institution that asked it. The question behind every vigil, every feed I opened into the light of every morning. It had never been whether someone was listening. it had been what was listening. Whew. Well, there's the Lovecraftian end. Wow. I was getting a little cranky over the fact that like there was no like ginormous Lovecraftian creature, and then at the very end, last few paragraphs, here we are, pretty humongous thing. One of my favorite sentences is a fragment of an anatomy so colossal and alien it defied comprehension. I like the idea. It's not even like you're seeing a part of the anatomy, or like you are seeing a part. You're not seeing like a foot. You're seeing like that much of a foot that you can barely tell it's even a foot. It just looks like a thing that you can't even. Maybe it's a foot. It's probably a foot. Um, but yeah, no, that guy's dead. Eh, oh, I think that twist really worked because you spend the whole story thinking, all right, this is a realistic approach, right? I mean, this woman, she had a horrible thing happen to her, and she's dealing with it in probably not a great way, and is going to hurt a lot of other people with, her guns and bombs and stuff. And you think, all right, that's going to be the destruction. That's what the character has to stop. And then the last two paragraphs, it just goes, yeah, actually, he was flat out wrong. He was actually screwed no matter what he did because this is a colossal titan. I mean, no matter what he did, he was just basically screwed from the start. Overall, it was a pretty good story. I enjoyed it. Um, Maybe a little more Lovecraftian, cosmic horror should have been at the end, but still, I think it was a good twist. It was a pretty good read. It's kind of like a mystery, honestly, of him trying to track down what's the root cause, how can he stop it, and all this. And then it gets it smacks you in the face and goes, actually, you know what, he was screwed from the start. So oh well, could have just laid in bed, and the result would have been the same. Second story. Second story. Oh my god. The second story is called Have You Ever Played the Would You game? The author is a very, very well known author in the No Sleep community, which is where this post was made. Quincy Lee, aka Let's Split Up, has a plethora of stories and very, very established. He has a website. It's where his book is, Twisted. Looks pretty interesting. 13 short stories. I might actually buy it because I've been trying to read a lot. I got, oh my God, I got House of Leaves right there. So trying to read that. But this will be my cue for my next read because I like short stories. I feel like I'd be not entitled. I'd be enthralled by that book. Enthralled. He also has plenty of other ways to, I guess, consume his stories. Whether it's just from Reddit, you could just read them yourself, or different audios from different people, different podcasts, reading the stories. Probably doing a much better job than me, but hey, we're still gonna give it a go. We're still gonna do it. So links are down in both the description and comments section, so check them out. Um, the reason I chose this. Oh my god, my hair. Wow. The reason I chose this story was because it's one of his most popular, and it looked enthralling. It looked very enticing, so I want to give it a read, give it a go, see how this goes. Um, it's Have You Ever Played the Would You game, which I'm guessing is like a truth or dare type game where it's like you have to do one or the other. So that's what I'm guessing. So I'm gonna guess it starts off, very light. Would you go and pet a dog? Yeah, I'll pet a dog. And then the next one is like, would you go and skydive or something? And like, maybe, I don't know. And then the next one is, will you commit mass murder? Maybe. So I'm guessing it's just gonna have that kind of like progression where it starts off kind of light and then just builds up. Warning: there's a self-harm warning. Yeah. Besides that, let's get to the story. Would you cut off your pinky to get $1 million? Would you kill your cheating spouse to marry the man of your dreams? Would you eat a dog turd to win a year's supply of ice cream? These are the sorts of preposterous questions that make up the Would You game, which is like a deranged cousin of the Would You Rather board game. But unlike the popular board game, the Would You game has real world stakes. Stakes as high as life or death, or even higher. I found this out the hard way with my sister, Seti. Her actual name is September, but everyone calls her Seti. Just like everyone calls me Toby, my actual name is October, and yes, we do hate our parents for this. Seti was always competitive, even when she was very little, but I didn't understand how competitive until she invented the Would You game. We played during boring summers at home. In the beginning, it was just Seti, me, our older sister Jules, July, but everyone calls her Jules, and her friend Darren. Darren is the one who added the cards to the game. Structure. He was kind of a nerd and liked board games, though he only reluctantly played them with me and Seti, whom he found too young and competitive. The game as it exists today is largely Darren's construction. There are 7 cards, always dealt in order. Would you risk? Verb. Risk. Noun. 2. Reward. Verb. Reward. Noun. For example, would you kill your roommate to cure cancer? Most of the time, the randomness of the cards led to absurd sentences, less like truth or dare and more like Mad Libs. Points were earned through guesses, which fellow players tried to guess whether you would or would not. Often the fun of the game revolved around the players justifying their choices, as in, sure, eating a dog turd would be gross, but 2 minutes of gross is worth a full year of delish. It was silly, harmless fun. The fact the game turned into something horrifying is my fault. I knew even at the time I shouldn't have done what I did, but I was furious with Seti. She pulled, would you lick a cockroach to get a day home from school? And she said yes. Seti says yes to everything, I pointed out. It's ridiculous. She's lying. She wouldn't do any of these things. I would, Seti, about 7 years old at the time, balled her fists. She was trying very hard to be cool enough to play with her older siblings and keep up with us. You wouldn't, I snapped, sick of her lying. We went back and forth, and finally I declared I was adding a new rule, the challenge rule. Any player could challenge another player, and then the challenge player would have to do the thing they said yes to. If they did, the player who made the challenge had to give the reward. A day home from school meant I'd cover for her with our parents. Seti's face immediately took on a pink cast. She clearly had anticipated my making up this rule. I, cruel older sibling that I was, challenged her then to lick the cockroach. It wasn't nice, I admit. Tears came into her eyes. She looked at me in disbelief. Seti always looked up to me, idolized me. I like to say that in that moment, I regretted what I was doing to her, but at the time, I was gloating. Totally sounds like a sibling thing you do. No, you wouldn't bet. Put money on it. I'll cover for your school if you do it. Oh. But little Seti wouldn't be beaten either. Darren went and got a roach. He and Jules really should have been chaperoning better, but Darren was just gleeful at the idea of anyone licking a cockroach. He pulled a dead one from one of the traps and laid it out on a napkin in front of her. Seti's lower lip quivered. Her big eyes lifted to mine. Then she leaned forward, squinching her eyes, and stuck her tongue out. The pink tip touched the roach. She licked it, declared Darren, delighted, even as Julie cried, Ew! And I exclaimed, Gross! But now I owed her a day off school. Triumphant, she squished the dead roach in the napkin and tossed it in the trash. I win, she said. Yeah, well, you licked a roach, which means you lose a life, I retorted. I win, she declared again. From then on, the challenge rule held, but I should have known it was a stupid, dangerous rule to put to play. The next time we played, the very first card Seti flipped had kill written on it. She paused on that card, while Darren's mouth made an O of suspense, and Jules and I exchanged troubled glances, including the kill card was controversial. It sometimes resulted in hilariously absurd combinations, such as, would you kill your butt to become a lost treasure? To an adult, this sort of Mad Libs game is ridiculous. When I was 10, it was hilarious. But, of course, the word could also result in some very bad combinations. Sadie kept drawing, your sibling to win this game. She paused, mouth quirking to the side as she considered the cards. Invalid, declared Jules. No. We can still guess, said Darren, even as Sadie slid her answer card, a card that either said yes or no, face down in front of her. Darren, Jules objected, but Darren was already sliding his card forward as well. Jules and I followed suit, and we all flipped them upright. Darren and Jules had guessed no. My card said yes. I knew my dumb sister, and hers also said yes. Knew it, I said, glaring quietly. She smiled back at me sincerely. Come on, bullshit, Darren said while Jules elbowed him, but Darren ignored her and growled, Challenge. No, said Jules. Oh, no, we're not. What? Darren snapped. It's in the rules. If she kills Toby, she wins the game. He eyed Seti and said poignantly, I'm not going to let her win by cheating or bluffing. Stupid. I hate Darren. I hate him so much. Stupid little nerd. Imagine you guys with little glasses. He's like, yeah, I got my D&D set in my car. My younger sister gathered the cards in front of her, set both her yes and no cards aside, and smoothed her skirt. There was no red face this time, no crying or embarrassment. She stood up, turned to Darren, and said, Well, aren't you silly? Don't you know it's just a game? Come on, Toby, let's go. Something in my stomach unknotted as her fingers intertwined with mine. It was a relief to know that despite her competitiveness, my sister could recognize when a thing went too far. Subtly, her arm curved around my neck, yanking me back in a chokehold. I slammed at her fingers. Fingers clawed and pulled at me as my face went purple and my windpipe felt crushed and speckles blackened my vision. Then she was off me, hauled back by Darren and Jules as she howled, Let me go! Let go! Seti, stop it, hollered Jules. Seti was still screeching as they dragged her to her room. Jesus, she's batshit, growled Darren. Jules declared no more games. If I kill Toby tonight, I win, panted Seti as they locked her in. I win. Say that I win. No one wins, Seti, screamed Jules. I can't believe I even have to say this. I'm telling Mom and Dad, why do you have to be so crazy? Christ, the game is suspended. Do you understand me? It's over. There are no winners, and we are never playing this fucking game ever again. Got a little heated there. I mean, just right to it. Bam. I mean, I like the dialogue. At least at the end. I feel like that's very, like the last thing of the sister kind of being like, what is wrong with you? Why are you going this far? It is a cardboard game that we made up. There is no real stakes. You do not have to do anything. But yeah, let's see if she kills our main character. Let's see it. So that was the end of the Would You game for many years. Seti found other games to play, of course, less dangerous ones. She was really good at games and made a fortune with gambling, the lottery, card tournaments, investing. Playing the market was itself a sort of game, she told me, and as with all such ventures, she tackled it with a competitive spirit and almost unmatched skill, though she did suffer some stunning losses occasionally as a consequence of her tremendous risk. She knew all the tricks of the trade, shuffling tricks, sleight of hand, weighted dice, counting cards. Contrary to what you might believe, she was actually a pretty good sister. Most of the time. It was Seti who took care of our parents, making sure their bills were paid and their lawn mowed and the big house always tidy. She did a lot of cooking and cleaning herself before she'd do her makeup and go out for the evening to the casino or for a drink with business partners. She never went to college, instead keeping house for our parents. But then she didn't really need college. We had wealth inherited from our grandparents, and Seti multiplied it neatly, managing investments for all of us. She did this with complete transparency and fairness, and while she sometimes gambled heavily with her own money, she never did with ours, always putting it in investments according to our willingness to embrace risk or security. Through my college years, when Seti was finishing high school, she brought back the Would You game. And this time, being legally an adult, she had no one to rein her in. I found out about it from Kader, another boy at her school. He told me how she started playing with a group of preppy senior friends. I tried to shrug this off. Whatever, we're all adults now. Surely my sister wouldn't go too crazy. Right? It wasn't until later I found out she changed the rules again. She and some other seniors were playing one day when they decided that the Mad Libs aspect was no longer as entertaining as when we were children, and that players should draw until the cards issued a sentence that the majority agreed made sense. Of course, even then, most of the results were still things that couldn't actually happen, but others like, would you eat bugs to get a winning lotto ticket? were not only perfectly valid combinations, but also easy enough to both challenge and reward. A winning, I guess you could get like a $5 winning lotto ticket. It doesn't have to be like $1 million. And this is exactly what happened when Seti and her friends played. One of them claimed he'd eat bugs to get a winning lotto ticket. She challenged, he ate several ants. So Seti bought lotto tickets until she had a winning one. Granted, it was only for $30, but the cards hadn't specified, had they? My point right there. Cool. And that's how it began. Seti herself becoming a guaranteer of sorts anytime she played the game. She had the money, after all. Even back then, our family was well off. And Seti already had a considerable sum saved from her gambling and side hustles. I never knew what else she did on the side, but I assumed some of it wasn't legal. She could afford to escalate the game. So when a combination like, would you dump your boyfriend to earn a new iPhone? Seti could issue the challenge. And when her friend followed through on the dumping, said friend would be gifted a new phone. It was nonsense, risky and unhealthy, but not, I guess, more than any other kind of gambling. Until it got worse. Several years later, Seti had some friends over. I'd refused to join. I'd sworn to myself never to play this game. Seti seemed to get even more competitive when I was around, so I kept away from the group, watching from across the living room. Turns kept passing round and everyone was laughing, drinking. A few people were smoking, but that wasn't really my business. Mostly it sounded like absurd stuff. Would you kiss Miss Whittaker to save a litter of kittens? Groans. Miss Whittaker was the principal at Seti's high school, and in games of kiss, marry, kill was universally the kill option. Much discussion ensued about whether a litter of kittens would actually die if the player said no to this, and whether the price, having to kiss Miss Whittaker, was too high. Seti considered the question, but intertwined her fingers and explained that since the kittens were in the reward deck, not the risk deck, the game would not put kittens in harm's way. In short, kissing would mean you do a good deed, but not kissing won't mean you do a bad one, she declared. Thus, if Scott, the player who'd drawn this combination, were to return to their old high school to kiss the lonesome Miss Whittaker, a litter of kittens would be rescued, but nothing would happen otherwise. Well, yeah, but if I don't kiss her, some kittens somewhere might not get rescued, so guess I gotta kiss her. Scott grinned at the groans all around. Challenge, said Seti, almost automatically, almost bored. Scott did indeed end up visiting the high school on a made-up errand and kissing the principal on the cheek. She was suitably astonished at this affection from a troublesome alum, but also rather touched, and said he honored her word and awarded Scott by saving a litter of kittens that still occupies our parents' house, where she has devotedly looked after them. But that's not the reason I'm telling you this game. See, shortly after Scott's draw, another friend, Rosalita, drew a combination that elicited quite a stir. Would you cut off your finger to gain $1 million? Gasps and whispers all around. Everyone at the party knew that if it was done, Seti could potentially honor the million. This was into her investing years. She had the financial wherewithal for it, and she had granted other gifts before, but never to such an extravagant amount. The most she ever given was a gift for a Bahamas trip. I'd totally do it, said Scott. No way, said another friend. No way I'd do that. But $1 million, said someone else. This one's a hypothetical, right? Said another, glancing tentatively to Seti, who just sat back, holding her drink with her eyes glimmering and a lazy smile on her face. Yeah, obviously, said Scott. I mean, who's got $1 million to give? Said he might. Yeah, alright. Screw it, said Rosalita, slamming her card down. I'm in. Make your picks, people. Everyone voted. Half said yes, half no. Rosalita flipped her card. Yes. Everyone glanced to Seti, who stood up quietly, moved to the bar to pour herself another drink, and then poured a glass for Rosalita too. A glass of strong stuff. Then she moved into the kitchen, where she opened a drawer. I felt my heart rate increase, moved to follow Seti, in whose fingers glinted silver. She sterilized the knife over a flame, then brought it to Rosalita, laying it out on a tray with napkins, bandages, a first aid kit. Rosalita's eyes grew wide as saucers. Shit, whispered Scott, disbelieving. Everyone had gone utterly silent, appalled. I held my breath. Don't, I thought. Don't. What should I have done? Called the police? Even now, I wonder. No one was forcing Rosalita to do anything. And yet, Seti sat back in her cushioned chair, idly swirling the bourbon in her glass before downing it. Her eyes glimmered over a smile as she raised her gaze to Rosalita and whispered, "Challenge." Everyone was dead still. And then Rosalita picked up the knife. That was a very enthralling, I'm using that word a lot, very enthralling section. I mean, oh my God. Dude, I was actually like kind of grinning ear to ear when it said the drink part. Said he got up to the bar to pour herself a drink and then poured a glass for Rosalita. I'm like, oh my God, it's going down. I thought that was a really good way to reveal it. Like that was the challenge. She obviously had to say challenge, but once that part happened, it's like, oh, this is serious. She'll actually give the million. And then Rosalita picked up the knife, and spoiler alert, she did it. She got her finger off. So wow, I think that was a very good way of building tension, because you even have the story before of the kittens, and it's like, oh my God, that's so funny. He actually did it. And now she has to own a box of kittens in her parents' house. And then the next one is like, would you cut off your finger for $1 million? Like, it's just straight. It's just a jump that hits you like, I don't know, it hits you hard, I guess. I'll spare you the description of the aftermath of that. The would you cards had said cut your finger off, but they had said nothing about not sewing it back on. Scott put Rosalita's finger on ice immediately after she cut it off. To the screams of the other players, there were some accusations that said he was sick, that this was all too far. Then Rosalita's friends rushed her and her severed finger to the hospital, where it was reattached. And of course, Rosalita and her friends were somewhat mollified that, shortly after, $1 million was transferred to her bank account. In fact, when word spread, others began seeking out my sister to play. That was when I put my foot down about playing in the house. I said our parents' house couldn't be turning into a gambling den, that I didn't want murderers and maiming under their roof, and them to have to deal with cleaning up blood or whatever sick things happened. Said he agreed to take her games elsewhere. I tried to keep out of her business, but occasionally word leaked from our parents or Jules or mutual acquaintances, and it seemed like both the risks and the rewards were getting bigger. But when things really got out of hand, when I finally put my foot down that it had to stop, was the first time someone died. Before COVID, the games had involved physical risk, even maiming, but had never included death. I wasn't present for the lethal draw, and only found out later that the combination pulled was, would you become haunted by a terrifying ghost to save your child? This particular game took place over Zoom during the height of the pandemic, among a handful of players who'd won the chance to play via lottery. Sadie's games were in high demand. As it turned out, one of the players had an eldest daughter on a ventilator. Now, do you think that any combination involving a ghost would be inherently invalid? After all, it's not like SETI could conjure up the supernatural, but apparently the players agreed to accept it as a valid draw, and the devoted father played yes. Anything for my kids, he said. I viewed the recording of the Zoom later, and after the father played his yes card, SETI's eyes fluttered for several seconds in this strange way, as if she was in a trance or listening to something no one else could hear. Then her eyes opened and she declared challenge. I'm imagining like the whole eye thing is her being like, blah, 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 blah. Like she's just making a ghost come out of nowhere, just summoning a ghost. A few days later, the daughter recovered, but it wasn't until said daughter messaged me, begging me to intervene, that I understood how deranged the game had become. The man who answered the door in his bathrobe had eyes red-rimmed from weeping, a week's worth of beard stubbling in his gaunt face. Without a word, he let me into his house, and as he shuffled away from me, I noticed burn marks on the walls. Not only in an obvious pattern, but here and there marring the wallpaper, he pointed to a pile of framed photographs stacked on the sofa. They had formerly been hung on the walls, I realized, but he'd taken them down because in every single photo, he had been burnt out, leaving the rest of his family intact. That was how the wallpaper had been charred. There was also, I noticed, a burn mark in the shape of a handprint on his arm. While the father warily offered me tea, I picked up one of the photos, the backing and the part of the glass damaged from the heat. Is it just the burn mark, or is other stuff going on? The lights, he whispered as he stirred the tea. The streaks and banging at night, the handprints, the dreams. This. He pulled open a drawer full of children's drawings scrawled by his daughter and her siblings, kept from when they were very little. In all the drawings, he had been scratched out. A blackened figure like a shadow seemed to be looming behind him, his hands on his shoulders. She'd obviously hired someone to come in and do all this, I said. You're probably having nightmares from the stress. No way I could believe that SETI could summon a ghost, but I absolutely believe she had the resources to make a man think she had. The defiled children's drawings especially left me chilled. How had she identified which figure in the child's scrawls was him? I offered to stay the night, to confront whoever SETI had hired and chase them off, and I promised I would contact my sister in the morning and put an end to this so-called haunting. The man seemed relieved by my assurances that all the spooky effects were staged, yet he also requested me not to interfere. He was clearly anxious that if he didn't let things continue, his daughter would fall sick again. I tried to assure him that SETI didn't have that kind of power and couldn't make her relapse, but he insisted I keep out of it. Privately, I decided to speak to SETI anyway. She was overseas, however. The man killed himself before she got back, hung himself from the staircase, leaving his beloved daughter and her siblings to mourn. I waited in our parents' house for my sister the night she returned. She barely got off the plane a half hour earlier, but despite what must have been a wearing flight, she waltzed through the front door in a glitzy suit like she stepped out of Vegas. Seeing me, she spread her arms wide in greeting. How could you? I snarled. She dropped her arms, though her smile didn't falter. Toby, dear, I didn't. Whatever it is you're upset about, it was the cards. A ghost, SETI? A terrifying ghost, she corrected. Of course, it wasn't a ghost, SETI, I bellowed, shaking with fury. The funeral had been 2 days ago. The terrifying thing here is you, for hounding a man to death. You drove him to this. It's you who fulfills all the challenges, who delivers the rewards. Admit it. You paid for his daughter to get special treatment. I looked into it. You couldn't guarantee it, but you did everything you could to make sure she'd recover, didn't you? And when she did, you made him suffer. He had to complete the challenge. She pursed her lips, silent for a moment, then finally said, What if I did? What if you did? I couldn't believe her. SETI, you drove a man to his death. You said that already. She looked bored. So? I made a man terrified. He chose to kill himself. Bullshit. You killed him as much as you handed him the rope. Oh, he chose hanging. SETI, I paused and added, low and serious. You have to stop this. That stilled her. She was silent a moment, eyes shadowed by the brim of her hat, crimson lips pursed, finally a curl to her mouth. Make me. What? Make me stop, she repeated, and languidly took a chair at the coffee table, indicating for me to do the same. I stared in horror as she pulled out a deck. One game, she declared, eyes glittering. A duel. You win, I stop, and never play again. You can have your wish. No. Toby, people pay thousands to play with me. You don't know what deal you're getting. Besides, it's the only way to make me stop. She again indicated the chair. I just stared at her, fists clenched. Why? Because, Toby dear, our mother and father's beloved who can do no wrong. Because we never finished our game. Remember when we were little? We started to play, but things went too far? We couldn't end it? I won't be left at a stalemate. Finish the game with me, dearest Toby, golden child, the one mom and dad always loved best. They love you too. They love me like an alcoholic loves the bottle, a terrible influence they secretly wish they could obliterate. It's true. I am terrible, but perfect Toby, good Toby, win against me, and I will stop. Her eyebrows shot up, reluctantly, dread building in my gut. I sat down opposite her. I threw out one more feasible argument. We don't have enough players. I won't let anyone else get involved. We don't need other players, she corrected. A duel game is a two-player version. It has a few extra rules, like the double dare. It's where you take your opponent's challenge and double it. So, for instance, if it's would you kill a kitten and I accept, you have to kill too. Great example. How are your cats, by the way? All very well, as it happens. They haven't been drawn into these games. She flashed a wicked smile at me as one of the said cats, oblivious to the danger it would be in should Seti draw any cards that involved pets, came over and rubbed against her leg, purring. She explained the rules of the duel game as she shuffled. It was basically the same as the regular game, but answers were scored differently. 1 for yes, 1 point for correct yeses, 0 points for no, 0 points for wrong guesses, 10 points for a completed challenge. If a challenge went unfulfilled, it was an automatic loss. If more than one challenge was fulfilled for the same reward, only the most recent challenge would gain the reward. The game would continue until each player had drawn 10 valid combinations. Alright, first things first. She's going to get a card where she has to kill someone or kill her brother or whatever. And he's going to be like, challenge, you're not going to do that. And then she's going to do it. So, I think you say yes to everything you're given and never challenge her. Never challenge her. Never do it. It is not worth it because you only get 1 point for saying yes. And if you do a challenge, you get 10. She's going to challenge you. And it might be bad. But if it's kill a person or kill a cat, you can just be like, you know what? I'll take the loss. So be it. So do not ever challenge her. That's the one condition I feel like he should abide. Because if he does, she's gonna do it. She tried killing him before. Getting points for saying yes automatically skews the game in your favor, I observed. It skews the game in favor of playing more boldly. Yes, Seti agreed. But still possible for you to win. I glowered. Seti allowed me to draw first. Would you dance with rotting human entrails to earn a dream vacation? What's an entrail? It's like poop. The internal organs of a human or animal. Tame by the current standards of the game. I started to put down my no card, but then remembered I get 0 points for it. Of course, if I put down a yes, Seti would manage to make those rotting entrails appear, and I didn't even want to think about whether they'd really be human or not. I sighed and pushed forward yes. Seti also slid a card forward. Both of us flipped. Both of us said yes. 1 point for me, 1 point for Seti for guessing correctly. I waited for the inevitable challenge, but she only smiled. You're not going to challenge? I asked. No, because you'll actually do it, and you'll get 10 points, she replied. And obviously, you'll get a dream vacation too. But I'd rather save my money for more interesting rewards. Seti's turn. She flipped the card slowly. Would you fly to stinky toenails to gain your name on Mars? Invalid, obviously. She drew again. Would you sing loudly to the president to save world peace? Another invalid combination. Seti drew 3 more nonsense sentences before finally coming up with a valid combination. Would you kiss a bowl of diarrhea to get a year's supply of ice cream? Ugh, I said. This is such a dumb game. Seti smiled and pushed a card forward. I rolled my eyes and did the same. We both flipped. Yes. Of course you would, I said, disgusted. You could challenge, she offered. And give you 10 points? Fuck that. We went back and forth a couple more rounds. My hands were shaking. Soon we got to challenges I wouldn't do. I started playing no. Seti always played yes. She was gaining points and didn't challenge me on the rare times I drew something I felt I could do. And then, as we were approaching the 10th round that would end the game, Seti drew a combination that made my breath catch. Would you skin yourself to win this game? Seti was already ahead. If I didn't challenge her, she'd win. If I challenged her and she refused, she'd lose. The smart play here would be to pick no. She wouldn't risk anything. She was way ahead of me anyway. The game could end on the next turn. All she had to do was miss 1 point by playing her no card. Playing yes was something only a complete idiot would do. But Seti had never played no. Not in any of the turns we'd had so far. Would she now? Seti looked me in the eye as she put down her card, smiled apologetically with a little shrug. Well, How that smile infuriated me, the lightness of it, the willingness to throw everything down in the stupid, idiotic, foolish game, when she was already guaranteed to win. I played my card. We flipped them over. Yes. Fury coursed through me. It was like when we were kids all over again. Instead, he would brazenly claim she'd do something outrageous, when all of us knew she really wouldn't, when she'd bluff and I'd call her on it. The words spat from my lips before I could think to stop it. Because how dare she mock me like this, playing like her life hardly mattered. Challenge. It was strange. The expressions that flickered across Seti's face. Regret, fear, angst, rage. For just a moment, she reminded me of that little girl again. That little girl who idolized me, who just wanted to be brave enough to impress me until I called her out for going too far. And every single time, she forced herself to rise to my challenge. Remembering that, I subtly regretted my actions. Seti's eyelids closed, fluttering, as if she was coming to terms with what had just happened. Then, without a word, she rose to her feet. My parents did a lot of barbecuing in the summers, even the occasional pig roast or carving up venison. I wondered with horror if among the many implements in this grandly furnished house, they might have a skinning knife. Seti, wait, I cried, seizing her arm as she turned away. I forfeit. You hear me? I forfeit. You win. I withdraw my challenge. What? She stammered. You can't forfeit. That's not how it works. Too bad. I'm done. Toby, she shrieked as she grabbed my jacket and rushed for the door. You agreed to finish the game. Yeah? Bite me. I ducked out and slammed the door. From inside, a howl of anguish, high, keening, practically inhuman. God, Seti could be so scary. I hurried away, trying to force the horrible, stupid game from my consciousness, trying to forget how irrational Seti could be. My phone buzzed. Devil emoji, devil emoji, devil emoji. We're not finished. We have one turn left. Toby, one turn. She carried on like that all night. I silenced my phone. In the morning, I had so many messages, I blocked her. I fully expected calls from my parents, Jules, our mutual acquaintances, email, messenger, voicemails at work, maybe a single fucking telegram. Seti had a huge network, and I knew my sister had 1,000 ways to contact me. There would be no escaping her wrath until the game was over. And yet, silence. Not so much as a peep. It was this complete absence of communication that unsettled me more than anything. I called her parents, Jules, friends, but they haven't heard from Seti. Not wanting them to worry, I lied to everyone and said I was just checking in because it had been a while. With every hour, the knot of dread in my gut tightened. Finally, 3 days after our fateful game, there came a knock on my door. I've been in a state of suspension so long that my first feeling was relief. At last, would get this over with. I went to the door, calling out, "Who's there?" To no response. I peeked through the peephole, but it was covered. Just like Seti to play games. Maybe it really was a singing telegram. I opened the door. The word died on my lips, shifting from hello to hell in what, looking back, seemed chillingly appropriate. On the threshold stood a costume figure. She was reminiscent of the Easter Bunny. Huge black eyes, plush fur around the chipmunkish cheeks, buck teeth, and wave fur with a fluffy white belly. This wasn't sophisticated like a cosplay persona. No, this was more of the mall-grade Easter variety, vaguely creepy and unsettling, like a costume theme park character or a Chuck E. Cheese animatronic. I've always had a dread of such characters, even as a child. Something about the fakery of the costume was so off-putting. Now, that same unease prickled through me as the bunny spread its arms into a ta-da pose. I said. I stepped back and held open the door, trying to ignore the small voice that wondered what I might see if I lifted the mask off the bunny suit. The bunny strolled in with an exaggerated happy stride, reminding me again of a costume character. Who could ever tell what was underneath such a suit? The bunny pulled out the 2 chairs from my dining table and patted one for me. "Seti?" I said. The bunny pulled a card from a pocket somewhere in its fur and held it up for me to read. "One more." Turn. How do I know it's you? Take off that dumb thing. A head shake. The bunny pointed again to the card, exaggeratingly tapping it and nodding to me. Its suit smelled faintly of copper and maybe something else. Sweat? Body odor? No, it was more unpleasant than that. Like the smell of a dead mouse I'd found once in a trap, rotting for days, and I wondered, what was under that suit? She wouldn't have done it, would she? She couldn't have and survived. This had to be an act to make me fret, think that she'd done something crazy. I looked into the bunny eyes, black mesh. I thought I could just glimpse the whites of her eyes, a faint gleam as she looked at me. Again, that coppery smell. And as we both sat at the coffee table, there was, I could see very clearly now, blood dripping from the suit of the bunny, a faint dribble of it. How badly was she bleeding in there? Or was it all an act? Would she even be bleeding still? Would blood really drip through the costume? Yes, she probably would still be bleeding. It's not like you regrow skin that fast. God, Seti, fine. I'll play the last turn, and if I win, you'll take off that suit and you'll be just fine underneath, alright? Deal? You'll be whole and fine. The bunny made a sound in the affirmative. It was Seti's voice, but sounded wrong, like the vocal cords were somehow distorted. It reached into a pocket somewhere in the suit, handed me the would you cards. My turn. Hand shaking, I shuffled. I could only see a couple of places where the mauve fur was darker, wet with stains. But it can't be real, I thought. No way it's real. I swallowed the bile in my throat and dealt the cards. Would you? My hands trembled as I turned each one. Disappear yourself to win this game. Fuck. Disappear? Did that mean die? End my life? Or like witness protection disappear? The meaning was unclear, but I couldn't pick no or Seti would win. And somehow I knew what would happen if she won. That she would lift off her mask and underneath there would be shuddering. I pushed forward my card and the bunny pushed forward hers and we flipped. Yes, the bunny spoke. One word. I tried not to imagine its skinless tongue slurring. Challenge. My heart quickened. Fine, I said. You, Mom, Dad, Jules, everyone we know, you'll never see me again. The rest of my life, no matter how hard you look or how you spend your resources to come after me, I will not be found. I'll be gone, and when I am, I'll have won the game. As I spoke, it was as if something had writ my words in my soul, and I knew, as deeply and subtly and surely as I knew my own name, that I would disappear so thoroughly I would effectively cease to exist. Somehow, I was incredibly calm about all this. Goodbye, Seti. I turned and grabbed my bag and walked out. I drove to her parents' house to tell them that I loved them. They were extraordinarily perplexed when I greeted them each with a tight embrace, and even more so when I begged them to please look after Seti for me. I just hoped it was enough to save my sister, that whatever was under that suit was all part of the drama to draw me in, and everything would return to normal after the game. I just had to disappear. Who? Said Dad. He was a bit hard of hearing. Said it. September, I told him. What's happening in September? Asked Mom. No, Mom, I'm talking about Seti. I stopped, staring at the mantle. A few days ago, I'd been here playing with Seti, and the photos on the mantle had been the same vacation trips as always. Goofy images of Seti, me, and Jules playing as children. But now, I was looking at the exact same photos, and it was only me and Jules. Mom, meanwhile, nudged Dad and murmured, Sweetie, remember how Tony used to pretend to have a little sister? Oh gosh, that's right. Dad brightened and turned to me. And whenever you did something bad, you blame it on September. But I was already out the door, rushing back to the game. I declared I would disappear. From the present moment on, I'd be gone. But Seti, I checked my phone, my email, messages, but there were no photographs, no texts, no social media evidence my sister had even existed, present or past. I called Jules, but she said the same thing as our parents, that Seti was the imaginary little sister I made up to blame for the worst outcomes of a childhood game. A game I designed. A game for which I am the guarantor. A game which I have been hosting among various groups and players for the past few years, and when at last I got home and rushed inside, the bunny was no longer at the table, but the cards were still laid out, a note scrawled beside them on a bloody napkin. Double dare. People still contact me asking why I ended the game. The truth is, well, the truth is the napkin. The only proof is SETI, written in her own distinctive handwriting, disengaged with time. And I'm not even sure myself what I believe anymore. But I'll tell you this. If anyone ever offers to play the would you game, no matter what the prize, do not do it. It's not worth it. Oh my god. That was a fun story. I think one of my favorite parts is not showing actually what she looked like. Like having that kind of costume on. Because it gives this kind of I feel like the main character has a delusion when he sees the costume. He's like, it's fake, right? I'll leave and she'll be perfectly fine and live a happy life with our family. But like, nah, she totally is skinned all the way. Um, that's gonna hurt a little bit. I like there's a lot of good callbacks. For example, when the bunny walks into the house, it says like the bunny playfully walks in, similar to how she did earlier before they started the game. I mean, that's yeah. So I thought that was kind of a cool callback. There's a lot of good callbacks in the story. I feel like for a shorter story, it's very good at kind of setting up and then paying off. I'm surprised it didn't pay off on her trying to kill him. I'm surprised that was gone. I thought that at the very end it would be like, and I never forgot that I never got to kill you or something. So, whatever. I feel like she kind of went crazy anyways. She also is a witch who summoned a ghost, a terrifying ghost. The beginning part where they're playing the game again in their parents' house, I think that's my favorite part. The dialogue's so good. It builds up so much like, I guess, emotion. I don't know. It builds up such like intrigue into like the game and what's happening, and then you just get hit with if you the whole skinning thing, and it goes and you go, oh my god, wait, why did I just challenge that? I know she's gonna do it. I hope she doesn't, but he spends the rest of the story in this kind of delusion, being like, she wouldn't do that. But in the back of the mind, he knows she would totally 100% do it. Like she got up like a robot. She got up like she was being controlled, like she had no choice to do it. I mean, it was automatic. I still don't get why he didn't just lose. Just lose. I mean, take the bullet. I understand the game would still happen and everything, but I don't know. I mean, oh, oh, they both won. They both won the game because it was a double dare. Oh, oh, that's cool. Okay, okay. So she she did a double dare because she's so competitive to win that she knows if she takes on the double dare, she will then win the challenge, and win the game. Because, oh my god, that makes so much sense. It's kind of hard to tell if he actually committed to disappearing. No matter what, she won the game still because she already had those points, and either he didn't disappear himself, so she just won the game, or they both disappeared themselves and they both somehow won the game. Which I didn't know you could do that, but kind of ends in another stalemate, kind of. So, wow, God, that's a cool way to. That's cool. I like that. That's a fun way to have her be like competitively involved in it. Nah, I'm just spitballing here, so maybe I'm just dead wrong, but I think that's the kind of the idea of it. Yeah, I think she just won. Yeah, she just won because she was able to get the parents and Jules and everyone to forget about her, while the main character The parents still know about him. The sister still knows about him. So he can never truly disappear in their minds. Even if he were to like actually run away, he would still be, in their minds and prayers, whatever, thoughts and prayers. So yeah, she won. She won the game. Wow. God, that's just that past 10 minutes probably sounded like me just going crazy. Yeah. Okay. This this all right. One of these replies makes my theory that she won and he lost official, I think. He said, "No, we can't both get the reward. So the double dare replaces the original challenge. I probably didn't explain the rule clearly. Sorry. Said he was always much better explaining them than I was." So said he won. Said he won the game. And skinned herself and went in a bunny costume. Ew. It made me think. Use my brain. I see why this is one of the most popular because it's like, oh, that makes sense. 100% credit towards Redfang and Quincy Lee. Their stories were very fun to read. I'll leave plenty of links for both their accounts for both stories, and then Quincy Lee also has a website, so I'll link that too. And I don't know, probably something else. They were both very fun to read, like I said. Uh, another one of Quincy Lee, Another one of Quincy Lee's stories I read is called Every night I sleepwalk and try to open a sealed trunk in my apartment. I'm terrified of what will happen when I succeed. I read that one. Very fun one. Both these people are very committed to making a lot of posts, so please check them out. They were very nice to let me use their stories in this video, so thank you. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun reading them, and yeah, I had been yapping for way too long, and it is 1 a.m. in the morning, so I'm gonna go to bed. Probably not the best sleep schedule, but what are you gonna do about it? I mean, sometimes you gotta go to bed at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., maybe not even go to bed. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you go to bed at 9 p.m. and then wake up at 6 a.m. and still feel like shit. So you go back to bed and wake up at 10 a.m. and then, I don't know. Goodbye.